Warning, this video is for educational, entertainment purposes only. This is not medical or legal advice. Don't do anything we do without doctor's supervision.
So welcome everybody to MC Stories, my podcast by Marius Crkon. And I have a very special guest, Tony Hughes, A.K.A. Dr.Tony Hughes, who started his company Enhanced Athlete. He was a lawyer in the past, very good lawyer and a great entrepreneur. Hi, Tony. How are you doing?
Hey, good.
Right now you're in Bangkok, Thailand, right?
Yeah, Bangkok, Thailand. Just got back today. I was in Pattaya, Thailand, which is 2 hours south, which is one of the most fun cities in the world. But of course, everything is locked down right now. So I came back to Bangkok to do interviews and filming with some of the bodybuilders here on how they're dealing with Corona, whether they're maintaining their gains or what their bodybuilding strategy is. So that's what I did this afternoon back here in Bangkok.
Yeah, you said basically that before this Corona thing started, you moved to Thailand because you said you don't want to stay in the United States. So
right.
When it was possible, you moved to Thailand, right? And
that's right.
Yeah, you traveled around the whole world, and I want to know if you can compare difference between Asia, America, and Europe.
Europe and America. So as far as my reference points in Europe, I've been to Italy and I've been to England. So I haven't been to the rest of Europe. I can't compare it. But I meet a lot of Europeans because when I travel the world, this side of the world, Asia, there's a lot more Europeans than Americans. So I spend time with Europeans. I understand the culture. It's very similar to the US, whereas Asia is completely different. So that's what's a trip about it is like if I go from America to Europe, things are a little different, but it's not like a really exciting adventure, like for my mind, from changing my perspective as much, or just like the culture shock or making myself uncomfortable and have to adapt. It's easier to adapt. But Asia is like playing a completely different video game. Got to relearn and really study how these people think differently.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And from your perspective, you promote a lot of enhancing quality life drugs. So where's the best place to live if you want to live this kind of lifestyle?
I think Thailand, because it has a good balance between whether the government cares or people care. Okay, what happens is in Thailand, it's sort of a Buddhist culture where it's very accepting unless it's really harming people. And the truth is that most chemistry is not harming people, it's helping people. So there's only a few things in the chemistry world that the government really cracks down on here, and the rest, whether it's legal or not, prescription or not, they just don't care. They focus on things that matter. Whereas in the US, it's crazy because steroids never killed anybody. And that's just one class of compounds amongst thousands, but it's just an example. They never killed anybody. And yet they're highly illegal to possess, to use, to even give to someone. And so in America, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, why is there so many laws? Why is there so much law enforcement? Why is there so many police, so many investigations? All for what? Why did we create this police state that just limits our freedom? And in other countries, even though the laws may be very similar, they just don't waste the time on things that really don't matter. But I'll tell you what it is, though. In America, a lot of it has to do with big pharma and the mainstream supplement industry. And they have such a huge financial interest in preventing people's access to better and cheaper and safer chemistry. And so they've actually written the laws. And America influences the whole world. Between America and China, they influence most of the whole world. And so these pharmaceutical companies or any of these, whatever you want to call the super wealthy elite that control the world, they use America to do it and America's influence to do it. They use China to do it and China's influence to do it. And there's some countries like Mexico, like Colombia, like Thailand, that these mega powerful people just, it's not really worth their time right now, I guess you could say. And without getting too much into the politics of every different country, it's just that some of these countries are a much lower priority to take people's freedom away. And I could go into that in great detail. But the bottom line is, when you have more freedom, you have more access to chemistry. When you have less bureaucracy, you have more access to chemistry. And so 3 of the countries that I like the selection and access of things to, just as an example, is Thailand, Mexico, Colombia.
Yeah, 2 years ago, you were sued, right? And because of selling some life-enhancing compounds. And you basically said for Generation Iron that you were sued by the supplement companies that don't work because you were ruining their business. So what's your statement about that?
It's normal business. It's par for the course. And when you have either a company or a group of companies that figure out a way to monopolize the industry, then what happens is they can create their own profit margins. And I'll use, even though you asked about mainstream supplement industry, I'll relate it to the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry will sell a prescription drug for $1,000 that costs them only $2 to make. So if you look at that's a 500 times markup. Well, they have a huge financial interest, hundreds of billions of dollars interest. I don't know the number exactly, but more than we can even fathom how much money is at stake with these companies in protecting their monopoly. And so they'll invest in taking out any of their competition, whether it's through lawsuits or actually hiring politicians. I say the word hiring, but bribing, funding, influencing a politician to win. And then they will actually write the laws that the politician will try to push through and make law. So you have the laws in America in Western civilization being written by the mega companies or groups of companies that monopolize industries and are investing in creating a government and using the government as a police force to protect their profits.
Okay. How did in 2018? How did you get from that law?
The lawsuit was never going to. Okay, so in America, it's different in different countries, but in America, you can sue anybody for anything, and suing another company is a good strategy just to collapse the company under the stress of the lawsuit on the company. Whether it's legal fees or the time it takes of critical people in the company, or the discovery and turning over trade secrets, which are then used against the company. So the lawsuit had no hope of winning. They could not have won. It was a totally bogus lawsuit, but it was costing millions of dollars in attorney's fees. So at a certain point, they realized that Enhanced Athlete nor myself were going to pay a huge. What they really wanted was just a large money settlement. I mean, so you have, it's like a movie. You have to think of like a movie of politics and conspiracy, because it's all very similar. You have the government who has its own interests. You have the mainstream supplement industry who has its interests. The pharmaceutical company that has interests. And you have a law office that has its own interest. And the law office interest is just to make money. So these different co-conspirators get together when they have a common goal. And one of the co-conspirators' contribution to the conspiracy could be very small, like making one phone call, but it can be a very valuable, powerful phone call. And another contributor, co-conspirator, would be contributing the actual filing of the lawsuit, the actual soldier on the ground fighting the battle in the courtroom. So the soldier on the battlefield, the lawyer, his goal is to make as much money as possible. There's no values involved. There's no fighting for a cause. It's nothing like that for the lawyer. But the lawyer saw, so even after the other companies said, okay, we're not going to get anything out of them, just run the company into the ground, just destroy all of their lives, put them in jail. The lawyer still wanted to go forward because he wasn't getting paid. He was hoping to get out of it, $1 million settlement. But he didn't realize that the reason why Enhanced Athlete was started was not to make money. Making money was never the goal. And I don't think he had ever come across a business like that wasn't a business to be a business. Like the psychology behind the business is totally different. So when I was asked early on, should we settle the case? Would you prefer we settle the case, or would you prefer we invest in fighting it? My response was spend every dollar of the company fighting it. And not even for Enhanced Athlete. I don't care what happens to Enhanced Athlete, because financially that's not, I retired as a lawyer, and that was my income from the sale of the law office. So I didn't care financially if I got anything from Enhanced Athlete, and I did it. But it was more about the principle to stop someone. I didn't realize how deep the group went and all the other co-conspirators that were involved until a little bit later in the process. But in the beginning, the value was, we need to stop this person who is blackmailing good companies, who is doing it for the benefit of companies that want to censor information and deprive people of things that actually work and put out misinformation. Like the companies that are taking all their profits and using it to create laws against civil liberties, and using it to reinforce their monopoly and take away the information that would allow us to decide against supporting that company. So yeah, it goes really deep. Your question was, what happened with the lawsuit? The best way to say it is they realized that this company was never intended to make money. It was intended to stand for freedom, and that's exactly what it was willing to do, sacrificing everything to pay the fees to fight rather than settle for a much smaller amount. For example, the initial settlement offer was $10,000, and Enhanced Athlete spent many hundreds of thousands, who knows, like $600,000, let's say, in attorney's fees, or more, so maybe $700,000. And the good financial decision is just settle it. But I was a lawyer before, and I was a lawyer because my dad died and that was his dying wish. But I always wanted to help people and make the world a better place. So I kind of grew up with a fairy tale upbringing where everything was practically perfect, other than my parents fighting over custody. So I wanted to recreate the world in the way that I thought it was growing up, my fairy tale land. I as a lawyer, I realized the world wasn't a fairy tale land. It was a very dark place with very dark and evil people. And I fought against a lot of these lawyers who would destroy people's lives in order to make money. And there's a lot of them. And to me, that's evil. To other people, they may say, well, it's human psychology, right? People are generally selfish. If someone could get away with killing someone else and getting a whole bunch of money for it, and they knew they're going to get away with it, a lot of people would do something, really terrible that sacrifices someone else for their own benefit. And when I was practicing law, I met a lot of these type of lawyers. And then when this lawsuit happened, the lawyer that sued Enhanced Athlete was one of these type of lawyers. And when I was a lawyer, many of my clients couldn't afford to fight these type of lawyers. So if I tell my client, this person who's suing you has sued 100 other people, and he blackmails people, and he runs their business into the ground if they don't pay him. This is very common. So you have two options. You can fight him and you will win, but it's going to cost you $25,000 attorney's fees. Or they're offering you a $6,000 settlement. And I'm choosing a very small example that people can wrap their head around. But $6,000 settlement, but then you're funding this terrible, evil lawyer who's going to go out and do it to the next person because you're supporting that business model, or do you pay the $25,000 to fight it? And all of my clients eventually chose to settle, and that makes me sick. Like, none of them stood up for freedom. Everybody would rather kick the can down the street and just make a financial business decision. And okay, that's good, but then who's going to stand up for what's right? It takes a pro bono lawyer doing it for free. I couldn't do it for free. I had 30 employees that I had to pay. I did do pro bono work, but I couldn't take on some of these small business cases against some of these scumbag lawyers. So then when this lawyer sues Enhanced Athlete, to me, that was an opportunity to use the company money, which was intended for research and development, not for profit, and just move the research and development budget over to the litigation budget. So I know I'm giving you super long answers, but I figure I might as well answer thoroughly because someone out there might understand it and learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I like long answers, so that's fine. And we'll go to the beginning. But first, I want to point out that Enhanced Athlete is not just about the supplements and the products, but also about the content you provide, the information. I mean, you're putting some really, really, really good content that you can't find anywhere else. Basically, underground bodybuilding info. And here in Slovakia, many people don't know you. And I watched all your videos and got information from there. And they're asking me, where did I get this knowledge that I have in bodybuilding? And I basically said Enhanced Athlete, and they're like, whoa, what's that? And I'm just I said, check it out, it's on the internet. And they're like, oh, but it's English, you know. And many Slovakians don't know English, or they don't want to read subtitles and stuff like that. But it's some great content. I mean, who else does this, you know?
Yeah, it's really hard for people to do this kind of content because you get censored by doing it, or if you're a sponsored athlete, then you lose your sponsorship, or you're subjected to criticism. Or actually another big one is a lot of people just don't know enough information to get any deeper than to do like just surface area information, which people could just get on the internet anyways. So yeah, there's not a lot of people willing to risk themselves, also, you know, risking yourself by putting that kind of information out. But that's always been my passion, even while I was a lawyer, is truth and pioneering human evolution, which is developing the chemistry to improve the quality of our lives. And I find myself that I'm constantly limited by others giving away their freedom. And, you know, like, for example, when a pharmaceutical company tries to convince the world that a competing drug is bad when really it's good, and they put out misinformation that they know will manipulate the public to be against that compound, then unfortunately, because people are not educated or informed, they just do whatever the manipulation of the companies that hold a monopoly want them to do. So if I can educate people to open up their mind and realize the chemistry is much different than it's being presented to them, then they will stop becoming stormtroopers for the enemies of freedom and hopefully start supporting freedom, so we all have more access to the information and the chemistry to improve all of our lives.
Okay, now I want to go to the beginning. So you said becoming a lawyer was your father's wish, right?
Yes.
And you made a good business. I mean, your bankruptcy law company was doing really great. And when you had like a cold or flu, you didn't even want to take medication for the flu. You were so anti-drugs. I mean, what made you start Enhanced Athlete, and what did change your mindset about this whole thing from the beginning?
I was very anti-drugs from a young age, and then I did start experimenting with all the mainstream supplements. So branched chain amino acids, HMB, glutamine, protein powder, pretty much everything at GNC that weren't drugs. They were just, supplements and herbs. And I experimented through herbs and supplements starting at started working out when I was 12. I probably started experimenting with all the supplements at the end of age 12, maybe 13, I'm guessing. And I didn't do the steroids until I was 30. So think about how much time I'd been just natural and experimenting with natural things. But the reason why I specifically started steroids was I had always intended to do steroids, but I said in my mind age 35 would be the smartest time to do them because natural testosterone levels decline. And so I wanted to, as the testosterone started declining, I wanted to pick mine back up to an optimal level. And I knew that I would have to take steroids, which is testosterone, in order to do that. But I fast-tracked it. I skipped 5 years, did it 5 years early, and skipped 5 years of being natty, and chose to do it because I saw a bodybuilding friend of mine, well, actually a friend, compete in the bodybuilding competition. He wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was actually chubby, and he got super shredded in just a few months. And he had this muscle density, like the fiber. I could see the muscle fibers. And even though I'd been bodybuilding for so long, you never see that unless you see a competitor about to get on stage. And I never went to the bodybuilding competition. So I never saw the bodybuilders in that condition. I knew a lot of bodybuilders, but I'd see them in off season stuff. So when I actually saw them shredded before they get on stage, it's like, that's amazing. That's what I need to do. I need to take my body to that level. It's not about getting bigger. I was already big. And it was also, the other element of it was I could look really, really good if I did my diet, my training, my sleep, my lifestyle was all in check. I would look awesome. Everybody would think I was on steroids. And then if my diet suffered, my sleep suffered, and I didn't train, my body would get really soft. And so I felt like my body was high maintenance. I felt like I was spending too much mental energy, like thinking about every little thing I eat and every exercise I do and how it's going to affect my physique. And I thought to myself, this is at age 30, if I could just build my physique to a certain level, if I could create new muscle cells, so I have more muscle cells that I can maintain, and I could create my set point higher, so I could have a lot of muscle for even when I take a break, and my body becomes an asset instead of a liability, low maintenance. That was the goal. And then for quality of life drugs outside of bodybuilding, at some point when I was a lawyer, well, okay, actually the most hardcore drug I took the earliest was probably Adderall. So in my
when you were studying, right? You were studying at
for
that
the bar
point.
exam.
Yeah.
And it made a huge difference. And I was like, wow, if Adderall does this, then what do these other things do? What does modafinil do? What do nootropics do? And that's that same mechanism, which is that you are shocked by how much of a benefit some chemistry could bring to your life, or how it could make you superhuman. Then you wonder what else could make you even more superhuman, or what else have you been lied to about? And that's why I started with Enhanced Athlete, with doing the informational videos, also was trying to open up people's minds. So I would choose a very taboo compound, and I would just take people very slowly through this process to get them used the same way that we are actually manipulated by big pharma or anything, or big tech or anything in our modern day and age, where you just start making people feel more comfortable about something they were uncomfortable about. And then they try it, and then they realize that everything they learned about it was wrong, and it has tremendous benefit, and they wonder what else to try. And now their mind is open. Now they're receptive. Now I can really teach them the real stuff. But I have to take them through that mental process first. And that's the mental process that I went through, from going from a natty to being enhanced.
I mean, you started being enhanced when you started your first bodybuilding competition, right?
Yes.
But you looked really good when you were natty. But the point is that I see how you mean it, because I have the same kind of problem like you. My maintenance is like 4,000 between 5,000 calories, and if I miss like one meal or two meals, then I can't even make the time to eat it, and then I'm losing muscle really fast. So the main reason why you're taking steroids is because you can live more like freely lifestyle and still maintain the amount of muscle you have, right?
Exactly.
If you didn't use steroids and be still natty and have like 100% dedication, how do you think you would look?
I would look softer. So like if you see like there's a density to the muscle, there's a hardness to it. Like that hardness, that popping wouldn't be there. I did go natty about maybe it was like 3 months ago for about 28 days, I think. And as far as how I felt much weaker. Like in the gym, I felt like I had no stamina. Like my muscles would run out of fuel so quickly. Because I'm used to being enhanced, right? I'm used to just being able to go, go, go. And then all of a sudden I don't have the steroids. And then it's like, oh, you go a little bit. No, you're tired. Like, how do you get used to that again? The way you do it is you just have to train a lot harder. And then with the look of the physique, I would put on fat a lot easier too, probably. So right now I can be really flexible with my diet. But if I were off steroids, then it's like, ooh, if I overeat a little bit, then boom, that fat's going right around my waist and it's going to be stuck there for a while. And if I want to get rid of it, then I'm going to have to do cardio and just becomes high maintenance. But I have gotten my physique to a level where I consider it fairly low maintenance. Even if I come off steroids, I have enough additional muscle mass now that helps me burn fat much faster. So if I did go, if it's totally natty, and then I did do a lot of cardio and I kept my body and my food in check and all that, I could still look really awesome just because I have such a strong foundation now, which goes back to my theory why I'm not recommending everybody do these compounds, but I think men would be a lot happier if they did subject themselves to something highly androgenic at a little bit younger age to fully develop, because I think that our natural testosterone levels are not what they're supposed to be. I think our natural testosterone levels in the modern day and age are decreased. So at least getting our testosterone levels up to where they were maybe 100 years ago or 500 or 1,000 years ago, whatever. If not enhancing it even more and just finishing development, like going through a second phase of puberty. That's sort of what steroids did to me, is it put my body through a second phase of puberty where the muscles just became more in every way.
Yeah, good thing that you point out the testosterone levels declining, because I have a lot of friends in my age and they're telling me like they can grow even facial hair. They have like a little bit facial hair, but like small kids, and they can grow it, and you see it every few years being even more intense. What do you think is the main cause of this problem?
I think there's two elements of it. One is from our environment, as far as physical things that we're subjected to, like maybe chemicals in the food, for example. And then the other part of it, and being less physical, just less physical exercise than what's natural for human beings. Human beings at a young age are supposed to be running outside chasing animals and stuff. That's how we evolved. So now you put kids in front of a video game and they're not getting that physical stimulation. I think of the body's thinking, why do we need more testosterone? We're not chasing animals. We're not doing as much physically. We're not mating. as much and as early as we normally would. Like all the things that would boost testosterone or that testosterone are needed for, like they're being eliminated by modern society. And so that brings me to the cultural side of it. I think culturally, the modern globalist movement is to feminize everybody, because feminism is not a threat to the global establishment. In fact, it's very easy to control people who think that way, whereas it's very hard to control a man. We can say alpha or whatever we want to call it, but a very strong-willed, independent man with strong values, like a high testosterone man that we think of. So I think there's an agenda to change the worldwide culture to demasculinate men. And I think it's happening chemically, and I think it's happening culturally, which is one of the reasons why I like to get out of America, because America, there is very little masculinity left in America. It's like being masculine is like bad. They try to make it bad, right? Being in touch with your feminine side, and I don't think most men knows what in America what it's like to even be masculine. You know, like in the traditional ways that men evolved.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, you see it as a threat now because a lot of teenagers in their 13s, 14s, they develop gynecomastia. They have a lot love handles. They have fatty love handles. And I mean, some people talk about female birth control, that actually the part of it that gets in the water, and then when the water cleans out, it doesn't clean out the estrogen part, and that the kids are actually drinking little particles of estrogen.
Yeah, that's possible. I think the dosage on that would be so low, because my stepfather's a water treatment engineer, so I was able to look at all these reports, and you'd be shocked what's in water. Like tons and tons of chemicals are in water. You know, things that they're highly toxic and would kill you, but it's all about parts per million, right? So yeah, there's estrogen in your water, there's fluoride in your water, there's a lot of stuff in your water, but it's like only a couple parts per million, such a small amount. So whether we're getting enough estrogen from water to handicap a man's puberty, I don't know, but I do know that estrogen is a very simple molecule that exists in nature all over the place. There's plants that have it in it. There's plastic has it in it. A lot of synthetic things that we make have it in it. And I don't think that it was put in there on purpose. Like I don't think estrogen was added to these things. I think that they contain estrogen because estrogen is such a simple compound that it's just naturally occurring in our environment. But it wasn't naturally occurring in our environment, or we weren't subjected to it, 1,000 years ago.
Do you think that this threat will evolve so much that in a few decades everyone will have to take TRT?
No, I mean I think there's other ways to combat it, and probably should be, like, for example, taking an aromatase inhibitor. So simple, and it decreases the amount of estrogen that we convert from testosterone. So like putting most teenagers, because of being subjected to too much estrogen and having lower testosterone levels than they should for their health and to go through puberty properly, one solution would be to use a very low dosage of an aromatase inhibitor. Another solution may be to supplement with an androgen. It doesn't necessarily have to be testosterone, but the masculinating effects, the non-anabolic effects, if we're just going for the masculinating effects, this is the reason why we're considering TRT, we can very simply use Pervirin, which is a really cheap steroid that has very high androgenic value, and it's oral. So it's just so easy to take.
And it's not so much liver toxic. It's basically safe to use all year round, basically. Okay, so now I want to go to another topic. If you can give examples of every class of drugs that you use to improve your quality of life, like nootropics, steroids, CBD, kratom, and everything that you use daily on daily basis.
Okay, well, I'm going to look around. So daily, I mean, things like psychedelics, I'm going to get in the habit of using twice a week. And then I use fat burners like yohimbine to get rid of stubborn fat. I use Slim pills to partition, like I can show you some of these things. I use Slim pills in order to partition carbohydrates into muscle and to get my insulin sensitivity back. I use growth hormone, MK677, to cause my body to pulse its own natural growth hormone. And I'm not on these things all the time. I never take something every day. It's almost like I have the opposite of an addiction. I have like if I take something one day, I don't even want to take it the next day, as long as I got the benefit of it that day. You know, it's kind of like if someone gets drunk and they're like, okay, that was a fun party last night, but in the morning I don't feel like drinking again. And so like you wait until the next weekend and drink. And I'm sort of like that on a daily basis. I use Viagra, Viagra, Cialis, things to improve libido and performance. Black Ox is another one of those. I use edibles, vape, cannabis vape, CBD. Every once in a long while, I'll inject the CBD. I switch between, I use mostly anabolics and less androgenic steroids because I'm looking for just really low side effects, maintaining muscle size and performance. I take a lot of immune system stuff because I have an overactive immune system. I mean, not to the point of having something like arthritis, but you know, I have allergies and my nose is really sensitive and my immune system just overreacts to things. My digestive system, I have celiac, so I'm extremely sensitive to wheat. So I have to take some kind of allergy pill all the time to suppress that. And then I genetically have a very high histamine response. So I take antihistamines. And you know what's interesting? I'm thinking like, I'm listening to myself in the third person thinking, God, he takes a lot of drugs. That's so unnatural. But then I was thinking, you know, there's this argument that vaccines permanently damage our immune system in all these different ways. And just let's not, you know, take aside whether vaccines do that or not. But there's definitely something wrong with the health of the population in America, mentally and physically. And it's possible that I was subjected to something that put my body into an unnatural, more high maintenance state where I do have to use drugs to counteract the influence of drugs that, whether it was a vaccine or environmental toxins or whatever. So I think it's actually more natural to get my immune system working properly and to get my testosterone levels to where they should be than it would be to just let the unnatural environmental influences control my health.
Okay, next topic I want to go is these diseases. You basically, in your social media, you say that there's a cure for almost every disease, that the pharmaceutical companies don't want to show us. And last time you helped me with Carrie Nosler. For my rheumatoid arthritis, you recommended apple cider vinegar, sodium bicarbonate, Boswellia serrata, vitamin C in huge dosages, omega-3 fatty acids. And with combination of those supplements, I was able to get rid of all the painkillers. My doctor told me that I should take a painkiller every other day, which like ibuprofen, which is, I think it's the worst drug you can take for your cardiovascular system, for your liver, and for your kidneys. The painkillers are the worst type of drugs, and also they block the muscle growth by not signaling the inflammation from the muscle. So I was able to get a lot better and to be able to build more muscle just by avoiding the pain cures. I still use the catabolic steroids, corticoids, and disease-modifying agents, but I got rid of the pain cures, which is probably, I think, the best part that I needed. So if you can tell more about these cures for various diseases.
Yeah, I've healed a lot of my family and friends from diseases that aren't supposed to be curable. And it's hard to remember all the different incidences. I mean, like, for example, I honestly don't remember exactly helping you with that issue. I remember you and talking to you about stuff, but I didn't remember that's what I was helping you with a long time before. So that's just an example of I can't even remember the thousands of different times where I've just given someone some information about an alternative treatment and they've come back and said it worked, where Western medicine wasn't able to do anything for them except for prescribe them expensive drugs to treat the symptoms. And then with myself too, there's just been so many times where I go to a doctor and they tell me one thing and then I do my own research. One of the skills I have is I'm really good at research, because the problem is there's so much information available. You have to be really good at figuring out what's good information and what's not good information. And I'm really good at that part of it. So I can filter out all the crap and not let it influence me and focus on what the real facts. So yeah, my dad died of cancer. My grandfather, both of my grandfathers died of heart attacks, and one of Alzheimer's, I would say, is the primary cause. And grandmother of Alzheimer's, and other grandmother of cancer, other aunt of cancer. And these are all diseases that are curable. And I didn't know that at the time. I knew some of this stuff at the time, but I had more faith in Western medicine until all of my family was dead. And then I was thinking, oh my God, this just can't, how can this be possible? I know so many people. I network with a lot of people about stuff about health because that's what I've always been passionate about. And how come some people are curing themselves and they're not able to get the message on how they did it, and other people are dying who are using Western medicine? So then I go to China 4 years ago, and I go to the Nutraceuticals Expo that has all these drugs, all these herbs, and I'm spending 3 days straight there, morning until night, 3 days going. Even then I didn't make it to every part of it. It's so huge. And I'm really looking at all these different compounds that are available that I've never heard of. I mean, a lot of them are so censored on the internet. The only place you're going to see them is at an expo if you really get into a conversation with one of the suppliers that can get access to it. And then I go to these suppliers who have all these compounds and have there's all different kinds of suppliers. So some suppliers know a lot about what they're selling, and some know nothing about it. They just say, here's what we sell, these different compounds. And what I started realizing was that all these different compounds have so many different uses than just the use that it was patented for, let's say. So let's say Viagra, for example, is for erectile dysfunction. But Viagra actually does 10 incredible things. We're only prescribing it for one thing, but it does 10 amazing things. And I started realizing that just the physics of how this whole thing works is that all of the drugs have already been invented. I mean, sure, you can invent a new drug, but the real reason why a new drug gets invented is so that it can be patented, so they can monopolize it. If it wasn't for patenting, all the drugs that we need for all the diseases, they already exist. And they're just being hidden because and I keep saying Western because that kind of controls the world pharmaceuticals as far as where the money is, where it matters to these companies. If people in these cultures knew that the drugs they were being given was only for the profit, and that there's better drugs out there that work better, that have less side effects, more effective at treating the cause and not the symptoms, then everybody would leave Western medicine completely and go over, well, it's still Western medicine to use pharmaceuticals like this. They would leave the the current drugs that are being prescribed, they would just completely leave those alone and go over to all these better drugs that exist in these other countries, but that are being suppressed. So I know it's a really general answer, but if you understand the physics of it, that basically all the drugs for every pathway that we need to manipulate the human body, they mostly all exist. And if they don't exist, it's actually not that hard for a chemist to synthesize, to make a change to a molecule, and and then alter its function in a certain way. Like all that stuff is not as hard as the pharmaceutical companies will want to make you think. What's hard is the politics and the bribes and the control of information. That's where the real money's invested. It's not the research and development from these companies that they're investing in isn't to make the newest, best drug. It's to make the drug they can make the most money off of, which is usually the drug they can create a monopoly over. So I know I answered too broadly, but if you understand that, you understand, then you can go in with the mindset. And if you have a disease, any disease, you can say instead, okay, I know there's a cure for this. I know it's going to probably be outside of Western medicine, or if it's in Western medicine, it could actually, what's interesting is there are drugs that are prescribed in America or Western civilization for one thing, where it just treats the symptoms, and it's not even, it's not a big deal. But then that same drug could actually be extremely effective at curing another disease, but that's not what we're using it for, because we're not actually trying to cure diseases with Western medicine.
Yeah, like the Viagra, it combats high blood pressure. Basically, it improves your blood pressure a lot. That's why a lot of bodybuilders are using it when they use steroids that drastically worsen up your blood pressure. So they're using like Viagra for that, even if it's not prescribed for that in America. Yeah, I see where you're getting with that. And
here's one example of all the drugs that exist you've never heard of. Viagra is not even the best drug for what it does, not even close. Viagra is a PDE5 inhibitor. And if you look up on the internet, PDE5 inhibitors, maybe on Wikipedia or something like that, maybe you'll get a list of about 40 drugs that are PDE5 inhibitors. Now, that's not even going to be the complete list. There's probably going to be, 150 total. That's just what they're reporting based on, studies that were done to try and approve drugs or something. So even out of those 40, Viagra is one, even if we're taking the small number, and there's probably 5 other better ones that are better than Viagra, but they just couldn't have been as profitable. And Pfizer would have then prevented these other compounds from being able to get patented. It's like a warfare between pharmaceutical companies to prevent other pharmaceutical companies from occupying the same function of a drug that they already have a monopoly on.
Yeah, and like right now I'm dealing with that my best friend has ALS, and I'm trying to help him as much as I can, and his girlfriend is trying everything and searching every information, and basically 43 people have reversed the effects of ALS, and actually like they weren't even able to walk, and they reversed the effects, and now they live not a life they live quite a good life right now, those 43 people. So I mean, there must be some way, so
yeah,
like you said.
and that's why if people have so step number one is people need to think like not just what's hurting on their body right now, but what in their body is not optimal at this time, and just be really self-aware. And then you identify the problem, and then go in it with the mindset like there is a way to fix this. It already exists. I just have to dig a little bit deeper. You can't just go on to mainstream news or WebMD and hope that they're going to give you the information that competes with the pharmaceuticals. You're going to have to dig and find the right information and experiment. And understand that every body is different. The cure for someone might not be the same cure for everybody else. And a lot of these diseases, they take advantage of
someone's genetic weakness in a certain way, and you have to address that person's genes.
Okay, so that was quite a talk on that topic. And now I want to go to topic of what is Enhanced Athlete up to right now, and what are the future goals of Enhanced Athlete?
Okay, so Enhanced Athlete now has, well, it's actually just Enhanced Labs is the technical name. So makes products like this. So this is anabolic IV. This is an essential amino acid with nootropics and minerals. Like everything, I picked everything that went in it because all the stuff that I would want to drink instead of juice, and have it with breakfast or post-workout or intra-workout, and then like the Rage pre-workout, stuff like that. So this is, I'm just showing you so you see what the labels and what the visual is. So that's the new product line. And then Enhanced Athlete
I've also
still does
seen some sleep product, some sleep mix.
sleep juice.
Sleep juice,
One of my favorite. Right. Yeah, that's so good because
it has like
I have a hard time sleeping.
It has so many compounds that I was shocked when I was reading the label.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then still Enhanced Athlete International SARMs, and the content, constantly putting out information, but it gets censored a lot. Now YouTube, especially, is censoring anything that goes against the World Health Organization. Well, the World Health Organization is pretty much run by those interested in the pharmaceutical industry. So now you have, basically you're not allowed to, you never were though, really, on YouTube. It was always against their policy to present any information that they feel is dangerous, and they follow what, I don't know, the enemies of freedom, you could say, considers which is dangerous, which is any alternative to Western medicine. So always trying to get my information out is difficult. I have to be very creative in how I get the information out. There's anabolictv.com that has the uncensored videos. There's still a lot of my videos get reposted on YouTube. But as soon as a video catches a lot of traction, then it gets censored. So like if a video has 10,000 views, it's not going to get censored, not as likely, but as soon as it gets like 20,000 views, 30,000, 40,000, then as it increases in popularity, the more likely it is that that video is going to become censored, the more of a threat that is that it's gaining momentum. So I'm working with Generation Iron to do a series, but on YouTube, it's never going to be like it used to be, and it's never going to be uncensored. So the problem is people are unwilling to leave the mainstream platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, even though they're only getting censored information. It's just so easy to use those applications. It takes work to get off those platforms. So I am getting my videos onto uncensored platforms, but it's tough because people aren't willing to go to uncensored platforms. So that's the information side. So that I covered the supplement side and the information side, and then always research and development. I'm always working with chemists. They're making stuff. I'm asking for revisions. I'm experimenting with it, all that.
Lately, you've been a lot to Kratom and CBD. How's that doing for you?
My personal use of Kratom and CBD?
Yeah, your personal use.
I'm on cannabis right now. And
I couldn't even tell. Like, you mean the THC one?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it lasts about 3 hours for me. So a vape lasts about 3 hours, an edible lasts about 12 hours. So I'll do an edible 2 days a week, to just as one of my, for sleep and for sex, quality of sex, just like a relaxation reset, and for like anti-cancer benefits. And then I'll do the THC vape pen, maybe like 6 days a week. But see, I only feel it for about 3 hours. So I pick a 3 hour window of time that I want to, where I want to either take a nap, or I want to put my mind into a different perspective. It helps me see other perspectives. It helps me drop my judgment and see something from a different angle. So it's really good for problem solving and creativity.
Joe Rogan has been talking a lot about the psychedelics, and how you can view things differently, and he's a lot into DMT. Have you ever tried that?
No, but I definitely have been trying to get it, and I have so many friends that have and say they can get it, but I'm still waiting for it.
Yeah, he said like you get a complete different perspective on life. So I mean, it's pretty
You know,
crazy.
the problem is I don't want to do a whole ceremony and all this. So they're always like, okay, come to the ceremony. I'm like, I just don't want to do a ceremony. Can you just bring me some home?
But
And they never.
that's a different thing. That's you mean ayahuasca. From what I've learned, there's two types. There's the DMT normal, the free form, which lasts like I don't know, like 1 minute or 30 seconds, and in your mind it lasts like I don't know, like full day, but it only lasts a few seconds or a minute. And then there's the ayahuasca, which lasts like 5 to 6 hours, or I don't know, maybe 2 or 3. I don't want to put the wrong information right now, but it lasts a whole lot longer, and you have to have the ceremony for that. But the free form DMT, it lasts just few seconds.
That sounds very appealing to me. I mean, I did mushrooms that maybe it lasted 4 hours, and I took a absolutely massive dosage, but it felt like it was years. I mean, I couldn't, if you asked me 2.5 hours into it, how long I'd been in it, I would have told you, I am not sure whether I've been on it for 30 minutes or whether it's been like 3 years. I was like in a loop. So I did get some of, actually during that mushroom experience, one of the girls had done DMT before, and she said, oh no, we didn't take mushrooms, we took DMT. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, this is way stronger than any mushrooms I've ever had. I'm starting to go really psychedelic. I'm losing my grip on reality here, all this kind of stuff. And then she was trying to throw up the mushrooms, and she was freaking us all out. So it was a really bad trip. But the bottom line is I think I've experienced some of what DMT or ayahuasca does, even though I've never tried it because of the amount of mushrooms that I took.
Like on the DMT, the common thing that happens is they call it the ego death. That like you die and you're not the person anymore, and you're experiencing like some ancient civilization talking to you, but not as a person, but as like, I don't know, they can't even, I never tried it, and the people that tried it, they can't even talk about it because they don't know how to say it in our language. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're looking into that, right?
Yeah, I'm excited to use the actual DMT when I get access to it. You know, and then LSD, the one that I'm not really excited about yet, but you know, I'm sure I will be eventually, is the toad. You know, where the toad poison is a very potent hallucinogenic, and I've got a few friends that have done that and say it's pretty revolutionary. But they also like swell up, and it just looks like you really got to set aside some time and some focus that I don't really have right now. I can do a short psychedelic 3-hour mushroom trip. I would have time for that. I have time for a really quick DMT, but I don't have time to go do a 2-day retreat or something like that.
I mean, I see you're a businessman, and your time management is somewhere else, so it's really tough to connect with you. So you have so much things to do that you can't afford to kill time like that long.
Yeah. I would feel anxiety about spending too much time on it, and I'm sure that anxiety would negatively impact the trip.
Sure.
So I want to make sure I go in with no anxiety, and I don't feel like I have something else I need to be doing.
Yeah. And what are you up to now, or the near future?
Well, I try to justify everything that I'm doing as being productive, at least for self-development, if not improving the whole world. But it's kind of amusing that I would even try to justify what I've been doing lately. But actually, this last couple of weeks, I've been spending a lot of time with this Thai girl here, and I'm still doing my research. I'm still doing all of my chemistry enhancement work and filming for Generation Iron. But like in the nighttime, what I'm doing is threesomes with her and other girls, because she's bisexual and she really likes girls. And she also gets bored really easy. So you'd think that this would be something that I was asking for, but every night it's like, come on, let's go pick up a girl. And I'm like, I'm tired. And she's like, no, come on, I feel good about tonight. We're going to get a good girl. And so we go get girls and bring them back. And in America, this would be like really difficult unless you are going to a swingers club. Like for a guy and a girl to bring another girl home would be a lot of work or very expensive and very difficult to juggle. But in this situation, in Thailand, where everybody's so much more loving and accepting and less judgmental, and they're sort of more living in the moment, not as worried about what people think. And that's not all of Thailand, it's certain places and certain classes of people. So it's really easy here. And I've been exploring that and learning a lot about sexuality, my sexuality, and kind of catching up the lost time, because I didn't spend a lot of time on sex and relationships like traditionally like people did, because I was working so hard and so many projects for so many decades. So now I'm sort of catching up on that.
How old are you right now? You're 35?
37.
37. Oh, time runs fast. But you look really young, and I mean, the growth hormone is probably working.
Oh boy, I don't know. The comments on the YouTube and stuff says I look like I'm 50. But I actually look very different every day. I mean, today I look weird because I have I dyed my hair black and I put too much dye and left it in for too long. And then I haven't really been taking care of my face as far as exfoliating or putting on the right lotions and all that. And I have acne scars and all that. But I will say that, because this is really important for people to understand when we talk about age, I've always looked older, much older than my age. Ever since I was younger. When I was 17, people thought I was 25. And I already had a lot of muscle when I was 17. I was working out really hard, and I had good posture, and I was, carried myself really well. So people thought I was older. Now I'm 37. A lot of people think I'm in my 40s. But it's not steroids that did that. Steroids didn't age me.
It's the stress and the anxiety from the lawyer work, right? And from baby mama.
Yep. And I'd say it's probably 50% law and 50% baby mama. Yeah.
Yeah. If you would start using AGH from like 20 years old, how do you think you would look right now?
Well, what HGH does is it does prevent aging in certain ways. It does build muscle because it is a precursor to other muscle building peptides that breaks down into. And it does promote fat loss. So I probably would my whole physique would probably just look a little bit better, just a little bit leaner, a little bit tighter. I would have not put on a lot of the fat that I put on in my 20s. And I don't know that it would have affected like my hair, or I don't know that it would have done much for my skin really, because I don't think it would have done a ton as far as anti-aging. Not that I wouldn't do it, I just don't think it would have been a miracle to do it at that young of an age. I mean, it becomes more and more of a benefit as you get older, but I think I know where you're going with it, which is that if you start taking it at a younger age, you prevent aging in the first place for certain things like skin, for example. I think it would have prevented a lot of injuries. It definitely would have kept my knees healthier, because my knees, just all the weightlifting over the years, just grinding down, and now they're a little bit more achy. But I wear straps when I
or knee wraps when I lift, and it's not a problem. But it would have prevented the wear and tear. My body would feel younger with less potential injuries.
How many people in Hollywood do you think take AGH?
I think of all the performance enhancing drugs, that's the most common one. And I think that pretty much any actor that looks really good is likely using some form of HGH.
And another thing that you mentioned puberty and fat cells. Do you think that if you eat crappy food in puberty, that you develop the bigger amount of fat cells, and they are just there, and it depends on your nutrition if they hypertroph or they stay the same, but in your young age you develop the fat cells? How do you think nutrition in your puberty does affect you later in life?
The scariest thing I read once was a study where they proved that what a kid eats when they're like 4 years old, if they're eating junk food, that'll actually impact how hard their arteries are in their 30s or 40s.
Crazy.
So we think that, oh, this couple, we might be like 40 years old and thinking like, oh, we didn't eat healthy the last couple of years, and so now we have atherosclerosis, we have a cardiovascular disease starting. But that was actually starting at 4 years old. Actually, we probably did more damage. Actually, think about it this way. Like, even if I ate fairly unhealthy now, it wouldn't even come close to how unhealthy I was eating when I was much, much younger. So I had my mom's side of the family, which only had healthy food. Italian cooking, home, organic, garden-grown food. And then I had my dad's side of the family, and he knew nothing about nutrition. He was a hardcore businessman, and he did not have time to think about food. Like, he's a fast food guy, because until he got cancer, then he wisened up a little bit. But when I was with my dad, I was drinking soda, and I was eating frozen pizza, stuff like this. And so I was putting really unhealthy things in my body that those, let's say, just 5 years of what I was eating at my dad's house at that time was more unhealthy than a decade of steroid use would be in my body. So if I'm worried about steroid side effects, I should be more worried and have more regret. Not that I could change it. What's the point of regretting it? But it's just the significance of what I'm doing to my body now. It's just not even significant compared to the damage that was done before from diet. So I do believe that diet, even at a young age, makes a massive impact on the body. And insulin sensitivity is another big one. Yeah. And so when you gain fat, when you're young and you gain fat, you're also programming your body. And if you're young and you're being very athletic and you're eating healthy, you're programmed your body to be that. And now that's sort of the norm, your whole body. Your mind and your body get programmed when you're young. And that's an evolutionary thing, right? Because if you're going to be a warrior, then you program your mind and body to be a warrior when you're young, and then you're an effective warrior ready to perform when you're older, or a blacksmith or a merchant or whatever class that you're in. Your body's epigenetically getting programmed for that. So if you're young and eating crappy food and gaining fat and not taking care of health and building new fat cells, you're basically telling your body to become a fat, lazy slob later in life. And now, to change that, you have to do a lot more work, because you have more fat cells that are going to fill up easier. Your body's always going to try to go back to the set point where you're a fat, lazy slob. So I think it's really important that young kids appreciate and value their physical and mental state, and try to do things to create a better future for themselves later, the same way that we go to school or college, right? We're programming ourselves and getting a degree, but we're programming and learning for our brain. Well, there's other things that we should be programming our brain for too at the same time, but also we should be programming our body to be healthier for the rest of our life when we're younger, and one of those, like you said, is to prevent
growing a whole bunch of new fat cells to store a bunch of fat that we don't need. It would be different if we were thousands of years ago and at any time we could go 5 years without much food, and we need to put on a ton of fat to be able to survive through the coming winter, whether it lasts 3 months or many years. Then we need to program our body to store fat. But we don't want to do that when we know we're always going to have access to food. We don't need to be carrying excess body fat.
Okay, when you mentioned compared steroids to your nutrition when you were young, I want to point out one thing that you mentioned a couple of times. In Europe, we have half glucose and half fructose syrup. And in America, you have high fructose corn syrup. And many times you said that high fructose corn syrup is way more dangerous for you than steroids. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so this is generalizing because every individual is different. Someone might have a really bad reaction to steroids, but most people don't. And there's a whole bunch of different steroids, so we're really overgeneralizing. But if you take a fairly safe steroid that's used responsibly, there's going to be virtually no side effects in most people. In fact, in a lot of people, especially men with low testosterone, right? Adding testosterone in, even if it's adding a superhuman amount of testosterone, is going to massively increase their health. So here we have a class of drugs, steroids, which have a taboo against them, where they provide tremendous benefit, and in some people, sometimes when they're abused, they have a little bit of side effects, like not even serious side effects. Whereas you have high fructose corn syrup, which is toxic and causes your body to store fat and disrupts a whole bunch of processes in the liver. The liver is a really important organ. I think most people understand that the liver detoxifies the blood, which is really important, obviously, but there's like so many functions the liver does. I don't even know them all, but when you start looking into biology and physiology and seeing all the things the liver does, that makes me really afraid to interfere with the liver. But the good thing is the liver does regenerate itself. So I'm not tampering my liver, like worried about it every day. I'm just not letting the things, I'm not letting toxic things in my liver in an amount that my liver can't regenerate very quickly. And high fructose corn syrup is something that has no health benefit, and it only does damage inside the liver. And I'm not talking about just like fatty liver disease. I mean, sure, that's like a long-term damage to the liver, and that's like just a really broad disease that has a lot of different implications. But I'm talking about interfering with all the little processes that are happening in the liver for the period of time that you're on the high fructose corn syrup and for a period of time afterwards. And like, I don't want to interfere with those processes because the downstream effects of the negative impact on the health, it's like saying you have 1,000 different categories of your health, and you're going to take 300 of those categories and decrease your health by 1%. And that's, to me, what high fructose corn syrup does. And on top of, but we're only talking 1%. That's on top of the already potential fatty liver disease and leading towards metabolic syndrome, decreasing insulin sensitivity, storing extra body fat, ruining our cholesterol profiles, and all the other things that could come along with it. And it's all about how much is taken, right? I am subjected to high fructose corn syrup sometimes, I'm sure. It's the chronic daily consumption of it that is just hugely detrimental. And then you can use a sliding scale, like, okay, what if you have it once a week? Okay, probably not that big of a deal. What if you had it in one meal every 3 days? Okay, probably not that big of a deal. But in America, high fructose corn syrup tastes so good and it's so cheap, and the food manufacturers could care less about the health. That's not a determining factor on whether they move forward with a product or not. It's all money. And so they put high fructose corn syrup in everything.
I mean, it's basically costless. It basically costs nothing to produce almost. And let's
Yeah,
take
it's actually government subsidized. So the government actually pays the farmers to produce more high fructose corn syrup. And then you could read into the whole conspiracies on that, which is why when the government could promote any type of sugar sweetener or food additive, they're the ones that can decide whether it's cheaper or not. And yet still to this day, high fructose corn syrup has the US government's support.
And if you look, like, let's take it as a drug, right? Because it's so addictive. It's so addictive. And if you look at the most abused drugs, which is alcohol, high fructose corn syrup, and cigarettes, these three drugs, they don't have any health benefits, but they only have side effects. So I mean, it's crazy, right? That government support is because it means money. It's basically the best way to make money.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, I think that we had a good talk about this, and we could wrap this up. The last thing I would want is if you would want to greet some listeners, and if you would want to mention someone or tell some kind of advice to all the listeners, when they are from England, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and all these countries.
Yeah. Since the whole Corona thing is happening, it reminds me of one concept that a friend of mine who passed away, Kit Kreiser, said. And that was that, she was smoking at the time, and there was legislation to tax cigarettes like crazy amounts. And I was like, I'm going to vote for that because I'm against smoking. And she said, okay, you're going to vote for things, not so much MSG, please, sweetie. Jesus. She puts MSG in the foods. Speaking of food additives and stuff, they don't have high fructose corn syrup here, but they do have MSG. And I do think it impacts the population's health in different ways than high fructose corn syrup does. But she said, don't ever take someone else's freedom away because they're doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable, because that will lead to the loss of all of our freedoms. So the key to freedom is that you have to accept other people doing things that make you uncomfortable. That is the key to freedom. And so ever since then, I've always been willing to sacrifice my own comfort. If someone else is even smoking, and I get a little secondhand smoke, the first thing I think is, how dare you subject me to that? Second thing is, I think, you know what's more important than the small amount of secondhand smoke is our freedom in everything around this that we do in our life. And there's so many different elements of freedom. And so if I have to give up my comfort that this person's smoking in front of me so that maybe he won't take away my freedom, like steroids, or my ability to chemically enhance myself in any number of ways, then I'm willing to do that. So I would encourage, I don't think I've ever said this before on video like this, but it just popped up in my mind. I would encourage everybody that if they want freedom, then give freedom by stop taking away other people's freedom. And because what's happening in America right now, and with this whole Corona thing, is that the world's elites are causing people to take away other people's freedom. It's people taking away people's freedom. They're not doing it. They're a small group of people who just know how to manipulate us by using money and technology and influence. And we're the ones, you and me and all the other people around us are the ones who actually are taking away each other's freedom because we think it's okay, and we think we should because they're telling it's okay. So that would make the world a much better place if we allowed and accepted other people's freedom instead of took it away, and then we would get more freedom back. And as far as where to find me and stuff like that, it's hard because I'm always censored everywhere. Currently, the Instagram is Dr.Tony Hughes. I've gotten censored a few times in the last few weeks of talking about Corona stuff. So whether that profile gets deleted or not, I don't know. Facebook is starting to delete profiles where people disagree on the on the mainstream narrative about Corona. I'm trying to watch what I say, trying to give information to people where they can read between the lines without saying anything too literal that's going to get a video banned. And so that's another thing too that I want to say to everybody is read between the lines, because you have some very brilliant minds trying to give you information to save humanity, and they're not able to be as outspoken as they should be able to, because otherwise they'll get censored. So when you have these really brilliant people, listen really closely to what they're saying and what they're not saying. And just don't listen to any mainstream media, because it's pure brainwashing. NBC, MSNBC, CNN, whatever. Just get your news somewhere where it can be on a platform that can be uncensored, and you'll be shocked to find that the news is almost the exact opposite of what's being reported in the mainstream.
Okay, so that would be it. Thank you, Tony, for being part of my podcast. It's a dream come true. I've always wanted to have someone like you on the podcast, because I love the way you're thinking. I love the way you're thinking outside the box. That's great, and it's great to have you here. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all the listeners, have a good time and think outside the box. Bye.